The neon Budweiser sign flickered erratically in the window of Crossroads Tavern, casting red and blue shadows across the cracked parking lot. Detective Sarah Chen adjusted the worn leather jacket she'd borrowed from evidence storage, checking her appearance one last time in the side mirror of her unmarked sedan. 4 months of preparation had led to this moment. 4 months of building a false identity, learning motorcycle maintenance, and studying the intricate hierarchy of the Iron Skulls Motorcycle Club. Sarah had joined the state police 12 years ago, inspired by the legacy of her mentor, Captain Diana Morales, whose groundbreaking work in organized crime had earned her 3 commendations and the respect of every law enforcement agency in the Southwest. Like Captain Morales, Sarah had chosen the difficult path of undercover operations, where success meant becoming someone else entirely, often for months at a time. Under the guidance of Lieutenant Marcus Webb, head of the Organized Crime Task Force, she had infiltrated drug rings, human trafficking operations, and now, her most dangerous assignment yet. The Iron Skulls controlled nearly every illegal operation within 100 miles of Phoenix. Drugs, weapons, protection rackets. The club had its fingers in everything. But what brought Sarah to this dusty tavern on the outskirts of town was something far more personal. 3 months ago, a young rookie officer named Tommy Vasquez had been working undercover, attempting to infiltrate the same organization. His body had been found in the desert, beaten beyond recognition. The official investigation had stalled, but Sarah knew Tommy, had trained him, had promised his mother she'd find out what happened. Lieutenant Webb had been reluctant to approve her mission, knowing the dangers. "These aren't street thugs, Sarah," he'd warned during their final briefing. "The Iron Skulls have killed cops before. You'll be alone out there with no backup within 20 minutes. If your cover gets blown, you're on your own." Sarah had accepted the risk. Tommy deserved justice, and his family deserved answers. Now, pushing through the tavern's heavy wooden door, Sarah entered a world where her police training would either save her life or get her killed. The bar reeked of stale beer, motor oil, and cigarette smoke. 2 pool tables dominated the back corner, their green felt worn and stained. The walls displayed a collection of vintage motorcycle parts, faded photographs of past club runs, and several Confederate flags that made Sarah's jaw tighten with disgust. 15 bikers occupied the space, their leather vests marked with the distinctive skull and crossbones patch of the Iron Skulls. Sarah recognized several faces from her briefing materials. The man shooting pool in the corner was Razor Rodriguez, wanted for assault in 2 states. The woman tending bar, heavily tattooed with a scarred lip, was Angela Snake Morrison, rumored to be the club's enforcer. But the man Sarah focused on sat alone at the bar's far end, nursing a whiskey. Jackson Reaper Calloway, the club's president. 52 years old, with a gray beard reaching his chest, and eyes that had seen too much violence. Intelligence suggested Reaper ran the club with an iron fist, demanding absolute loyalty and brutal efficiency from his members. Sarah approached the bar with calculated confidence, neither too aggressive nor too timid. She'd learned from Captain Morales that undercover work was all about balance. Show weakness and predators would attack. Show too much strength and you'd draw suspicion. "What'll it be?" Snake asked, sizing Sarah up with undisguised hostility. "Whiskey neat," Sarah replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. "And information. I'm looking for work." The bar fell silent. Conversations died mid-sentence, pool balls stopped clicking, and 15 pairs of eyes turned toward the stranger who'd just announced herself. Reaper swiveled on his bar stool, studying Sarah with unsettling intensity. "Work?" he repeated, his voice like gravel. "What kind of work would a girl like you be qualified for?" Sarah had prepared for this moment, rehearsed her cover story until it became second nature. "The kind that pays better than waiting tables," she said coolly. "I've got mechanical skills, and I'm not afraid of getting my hands dirty. Word around Phoenix is the Iron Skulls take care of their own." "Word around Phoenix," Snake repeated mockingly, moving closer. "Sounds like you've been asking questions. We don't like people who ask questions." 3 bikers rose from their seats, moving to flank Sarah. Her training kicked in, calculating exits, identifying weapons, measuring distances. The nearest exit was 20 feet behind her. The pool cues could be used as weapons. Snake kept a baseball bat beneath the bar. Easy, Sarah said, keeping her voice level. I'm not looking for trouble, just an opportunity. Opportunity. Reaper stood, his 6'4" frame unfolding with surprising grace. See, we had another person come in here a few months back talking about opportunities. Young guy, eager, asked a lot of questions. You know what happened to him? Sarah's blood ran cold. They were talking about Tommy. I heard rumors, she said carefully. Heard he wasn't who he claimed to be. Reaper smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Smart girl. So you understand why we might be cautious about strangers walking in asking for work. The bikers had formed a circle now, cutting off any escape route. Sarah's hand instinctively moved toward where her service weapon would normally rest, but the holster was empty. Lieutenant Webb had forbidden her from carrying while under cover. Too risky, too easy to be discovered. I'm not a cop, Sarah said, which was technically true in this moment. She was playing a role. Prove it, Snake demanded, pulling the baseball bat from beneath the bar. We've got a test for people who want to join. You pass? Maybe we'll talk. You fail, well, let's just say the desert is good at keeping secrets. Sarah's mind raced through scenarios. Fighting her way out was possible but would blow her cover permanently. Submitting completely would mark her as weak. She needed a middle path, something that demonstrated toughness without revealing her police training. What kind of test? She asked. Reaper gestured to one of the bikers, a heavily muscled woman with a shaved head and tribal tattoos covering both arms. Tank here's our newest member. She'll go 3 rounds with you, bare knuckles. You stay standing, we'll consider your application. Tank cracked her knuckles, grinning with anticipation. The circle of bikers widened, forming a makeshift fighting ring. Sarah assessed her opponent. Tank had at least 50 pounds on her and arms like tree trunks, but her stance suggested brawling experience rather than formal training. Let's get this over with, Sarah said, shrugging off her jacket. The first punch came fast, a haymaker aimed at Sarah's head. She ducked beneath it, countering with a quick jab to Tank's ribs. The impact barely registered. Tank laughed, pressing forward with a combination of hooks that forced Sarah backward. Sarah blocked and weaved, using techniques learned from years of police defensive tactics training. But she had to be careful. Too much skill would raise questions. So she let Tank land a glancing blow to her shoulder, made herself stumble, played the part of someone who could fight, but wasn't a professional. Tank's confidence grew. She charged forward, attempting to wrap Sarah in a bear hug. Sarah sidestepped, using Tank's momentum to guide her into a table. The wood splintered under the impact, beer bottles crashing to the floor. Come on! Tank roared, recovering quickly. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead where she'd struck the table's edge. The crowd of bikers was cheering now, enjoying the spectacle. Sarah noticed Reaper watching intently, his expression unreadable. This wasn't just about toughness, she realized. He was looking for something else. Control, perhaps, or strategy. Tank launched another assault, this time more calculated. Sarah blocked the first 3 punches, but the fourth caught her in the ribs, driving the air from her lungs. Pain exploded across her side as she stumbled back against the bar. Not so tough now, Snake taunted, leaning across the counter. Sarah's vision blurred momentarily. The punch had likely cracked a rib, but she'd endured worse during police academy training, worse during actual operations. Captain Morales' words echoed in her memory. Pain is temporary, but failure can be permanent. Push through. As Tank moved in for the finish, Sarah exploded forward, ducking under a wild swing and delivering a precise strike to Tank's solar plexus. The bigger woman gasped, doubling over. Sarah followed with an uppercut that sent Tank sprawling, backward onto the floor. The bar fell silent. Tank struggled to her feet, rage replacing surprise. She grabbed a pool cue from the nearby table, snapping it in half to create a jagged weapon. The crowd's energy shifted from entertainment to something darker. That's enough, Reaper's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Tank hesitated, the broken pool cue trembling in her grip. But Reaper, I said enough, Reaper repeated, his tone brooking no argument. He approached Sarah, studying her with those penetrating eyes. You can fight, that's clear. But there's something else. The way you move, the way you hold yourself. That's not street fighting. That's training. Professional training. Sarah's heart hammered. Had she been too skilled, revealed too much? I told you I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty, she said, meeting his gaze. Where I learn doesn't matter. What matters is whether I can be useful to you." Reaper circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. "My son is dead," he said suddenly, his voice cracking slightly. "Marine Corps, killed in Afghanistan 3 years ago. 24 years old, his whole life ahead of him. I know what military training looks like. I know what it means to serve something bigger than yourself." The vulnerability in his voice was unexpected, and Sarah saw the club members exchanging uncomfortable glances. Reaper didn't often speak about his son. "I'm sorry for your loss," Sarah said, and meant it. Despite everything this man represented, the pain of losing a child was universal. "Are you?" Reaper stepped closer. "Because the way you fight, the way you carry yourself, reminds me of him. Disciplined, controlled, and it makes me wonder what someone with that kind of training is really doing in my bar." The moment hung suspended, dangerous and delicate. Sarah knew she was seconds away from exposure, possibly death. But something in Reaper's eyes gave her an opening. He wasn't just suspicious. He was searching for something, perhaps closure, perhaps meaning. "My brother was a cop," Sarah said, improvising desperately. "Killed in the line of duty 2 years ago, shot during a traffic stop by some punk with a stolen gun. I learned to fight because I never wanted to be helpless like that." It was partially true. Sarah had a brother, though he was alive and well, teaching high school in Oregon. But the emotion behind the lie was real. She thought of Tommy, of the brutality inflicted on him, and let that grief color her words. Reaper's expression shifted subtly. "A cop's sister? And you want to work for me?" "The system failed my brother," Sarah continued, committing fully to the fabrication. "The kid who shot him got 8 years, out in 5 for good behavior. That's not justice. That's bureaucracy. I don't trust the system anymore. I trust people who take care of their own." The bar remained silent, everyone waiting for Reaper's judgment. He studied her for what felt like an eternity before finally speaking. "What's your name?" "Sarah. Sarah Winters," the alias Lieutenant Webb had created for her. "Sarah Winters," Reaper repeated. He pulled something from his pocket. A photograph, worn and creased from frequent handling. It showed a young man in marine dress blues, smiling confidently at the camera. "This was my boy, Danny. Best thing I ever did with my life was raise him, and the worst mistake I ever made was letting him join the Corps." Sarah looked at the photograph, seeing genuine pain in Reaper's weathered face. "After Danny died, I lost my way," Reaper continued, "got deeper into the club, into the life. Told myself we were a brotherhood, that we protected our own. But somewhere along the line, we became the thing Danny fought against. We became the enemy." The other bikers shifted uncomfortably. Snake moved closer, her voice low and warning. "Reaper, what are you doing?" "Shut up," Reaper said quietly, still holding Sarah's gaze. 3 months ago, a young cop came in here, undercover, trying to infiltrate our operation. Good kid, reminded me of Danny. I knew within 10 minutes he wasn't who he claimed to be. Military training recognizes military training. Cop training recognizes cop training." Sarah's world tilted. He'd known about Tommy, had known all along. "That cop," Reaper continued, his voice breaking, "he died because of me. Because I told the club about my suspicions, and they took care of it. Snake and her crew, they beat him to death in the desert while I sat here, drinking, trying to pretend I didn't know what was happening." Tears streamed down Reaper's face now, his massive frame shaking. "Every day since, I've looked at Danny's picture and wondered what he'd think of me. What kind of father murders a kid who was just trying to do his job?" The bar erupted. Snake rushed forward, but Reaper held up a hand. "It's over," he said simply. "All of it. I'm done." He turned to Sarah, and in his eyes she saw recognition. Complete, devastating recognition. "You're a cop too, aren't you? Here to find out what happened to your friend?" Sarah's hand moved to her jacket pocket, where she'd hidden her badge, bringing it out slowly. The gold shield caught the dim light as she held it up. "Detective Sarah Chen, State Police," she said quietly. "And yes, I came here for Tommy Vasquez." Chaos exploded. Bikers reached for weapons, chairs scraped against the floor, and Snake lunged toward Sarah with her baseball bat raised high. Nobody moves, Reaper roared with such authority that everyone froze. He stepped between Sarah and the advancing club members. It's over. We're done. This club, everything we've built, it ends tonight. You're out of your mind, Snake snarled. We'll all go to prison. Good, Reaper said simply. We deserve it. I deserve it. He looked back at Sarah. I'll testify. I'll give you everything. Names, crimes, locations, all of it. But I need you to promise me something. I'm not making deals, Sarah said, though her hand trembled slightly as she held her badge. Not a deal. A promise. Reaper pulled out his phone, fingers shaking as he dialed. My ex-wife, Danny's mother. She needs to know that I'm finally doing the right thing. That her son's sacrifice wasn't completely in vain. Promise me you'll tell her that I tried, at the end, to be the man Danny thought I was. Sarah heard sirens in the distance. Lieutenant Webb, monitoring her wire, had sent backup the moment her cover was blown. I promise, Sarah said. Reaper nodded, then turned to face his club. Anyone who runs is on their own. Anyone who stays and cooperates might have a chance at something resembling redemption. It's your choice. Several bikers bolted for the exits, but most remained, shocked into immobility by their leader's complete transformation. Snake stood frozen, the baseball bat hanging limply from her hand. You're throwing away everything, she said to Reaper, disbelief coloring her voice. No, Reaper replied, sinking onto a bar stool as police cars screeched into the parking lot. I'm finally getting rid of it. The next 3 hours were a blur of arrests, evidence collection, and statements. Sarah's ribs screamed with every breath, but she stayed on scene, coordinating with the dozen officers who'd responded. Lieutenant Webb arrived personally, his face tight with concern. That was reckless, he said, though relief was evident in his tone. You could have been killed. But I wasn't, Sarah replied, watching as Reaper was led to a patrol car, hands cuffed behind his back. And we got justice for Tommy. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in the cemetery where Tommy had been laid to rest. His mother, Mrs. Vasquez, stood beside her, weathered hands clutching a small bouquet of flowers. He confessed to everything? Mrs. Vasquez asked quietly. Everything, Sarah confirmed. Reaper and 11 other club members are facing murder charges. The rest are cooperating on the other crimes. It won't bring Tommy back, but they'll pay for what they did. Mrs. Vasquez nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Detective. Thank you for not giving up on my boy. Sarah thought about Reaper's final request, about the phone call she'd facilitated with his ex-wife. The woman had listened in silence as Sarah explained what had happened, how Reaper had ultimately chosen to do the right thing. Tell him, Danny's mother had said at the end of that conversation, that I'm glad he finally remembered who he used to be. Before the club, before the anger, when he was just Jackson, and we were just a family. At the state police headquarters, Captain Morales presented Sarah with a commendation for bravery. You followed your instincts, Morales said, pinning the medal to Sarah's dress uniform. Even when it put you in danger, you never lost sight of the mission. That's what makes a good detective. Sarah thought about the moment Reaper had broken down, tears streaming as he confessed everything. Sometimes justice came from unexpected places. Sometimes the enemy wasn't who you expected. And sometimes even those who'd lost their way could find it again, even if only at the very end. As she left the ceremony, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from the district attorney. Reaper's testimony had already led to 17 additional arrests, dismantling not just the Iron Skulls, but 3 other criminal organizations connected to them. The web of corruption had been vast, but it was unraveling. That night, Sarah visited the hospital where several of the arrested bikers were being treated for various injuries sustained during the operation. Tank, the woman she'd fought in the bar, sat in a bed with her arm in a sling. Detective, Tank said warily as Sarah entered. I wanted to check on you, Sarah said, and to tell you that the prosecutor is willing to consider reduced charges if you cooperate. Tank studied her with surprising intelligence. Why? I tried to kill you. Because people make mistakes, Sarah replied, and sometimes they deserve a chance to correct them. Reaper showed me that. 3 months after the operation concluded, Sarah received a letter postmarked from the state prison. Inside was a single page, written in careful handwriting. Detective Chen, I wanted you to know that Danny's mother visited me yesterday. First time in 3 years we've spoken without anger. She brought photos of Danny from when he was little. We cried together, remembering who he was, who we all were before everything went wrong. My lawyer says I'll die in prison. Probably true, given my age and the charges, but knowing that I finally did something Danny would be proud of makes these walls easier to bear. Thank you for giving me that chance, for not shooting me when you had every reason to, for keeping your promise. The man I used to be would be grateful. The man I'm trying to become is just doing what should have been done years ago. Jackson Calloway. Sarah folded the letter carefully, placing it in her desk drawer alongside Tommy's academy graduation photo. Justice, she'd learned, wasn't always straightforward. It wasn't always clean or satisfying. Sometimes it was messy and complicated, found in the tears of a broken man who'd finally remembered his humanity. But it was still justice, and for Tommy, for Danny, for all the victims of the Iron Skull's violence, that would have to be enough. Outside her office window, Phoenix stretched toward the horizon, a city of second chances and hard lessons. Sarah turned back to her desk, where 3 new case files waited for her attention. The work never ended, but then again, neither did the possibility of redemption. Even in the darkest places, even among the most hardened criminals, there remained a spark of something better. You just had to be brave enough to look for it, and strong enough to survive the search. Captain Morales had taught her that. Tommy had died believing it, and Jackson Reaper Calloway had proven it in the end to be true.